Many of us just assume that Ha-Seong Kim will pick up his option and be the Braves shortstop in 2026. But what if he doesn't? And is he the only big bat the Braves will acquire this offseason? I'll answer that and more on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shortstop. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We're approaching 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and you can help others find us on YouTube. Just hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. On the audio version, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for your support here of Locked On Braves and making us your first listen of each and every day. And today is our weekly mailbag episode. As usual, got a wide variety of questions to answer, a lot of them surrounding Ha-Seong Kim. Will he be back? Will he won't be back? What if he's not back? All of those questions will be answered today, and a lot more off-season questions as well. As unfortunately, that's where our attention already is as Atlanta Braves fans this year. And this episode is brought to you by Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the U.S. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament, and this offer ends October 31st, 2025. Let's jump into the questions because we do have over 20 to get to. I want to make sure that I answer all of them. Joey Milby says, is Ha-Seong Kim the only bat we add provided he picks up his option? I got another one later on about him picking up that option or not, so I'll save that part of it for then. So I want to focus on the first question. Is Ha-Seong Kim the only bat that the Braves add? And I would be disappointed if it is. However, you look at it and say, where is the other bat going to go? You seem fine at catcher, more than fine, if you keep Drake Baldwin and Sean Murphy, and that's another question we'll have to answer today. First base, you seem fine. Second base, you seem okay. There's certainly a place where you could upgrade. For instance, if you were able to get a Ketel Marte or even a Brandon Lowe, I think there's a possibility for that. I think it's looking less likely now with the way Ozzy's played in the second half. Again, assuming that Ha-Seong Kim is your upgrade at shortstop, assuming, obviously Austin Riley's going to be back, Acuña in right, Harris in center, and Profar in left, where are you really adding that bat? And DH is the only thing if you didn't want to, have both catchers in that role. So while I want them to add another bat, I hope that Ha-Seong Kim's not the only bat, because let's not forget what happened the first 4 months of this season, and really most of last year as well, which you could blame a lot on injuries then. The offense has been bad. And I think things need to be shaken up, or either these guys need to finally get on board with the Tim Hires approach, and where it seems like the organization seems to be wanting to go with the additions of a Profar and now a Ha-Seong Kim that are more contact-oriented type of players with some speed. And if that is the direction that they want to go, I think that's great. But I think you need to build a team around that. And the guys that they haven't shown that they can do that in the past. So it's kind of a side tangent there. To answer the question, no, Ha-Seong Kim can't be the only bat you add. Don't know where you put him, but I think you figure that out. But I do think another big bat needs to come in some form or fashion. And you can bring him in and you can have Profar DH some days. If Sean Murphy's hot, you can DH him some. Obviously, Baldwin can DH if you want to get Murphy behind the plate more. You can move players around and you can figure it out. Nothing wrong with having more options. As you know, there's going to be some attrition throughout the year. So if it's me, and somebody's going to ask me later on, if I'm the GM, what would I do? Ha-Seong Kim would not be the only bat that I'm adding this offseason. Julie Craig says, if Kim doesn't stay, what are the options at shortstop? So we talked a little bit about this on yesterday's episode, and there are not a lot of great options. One would be Kim. Obviously, he decides not to stay, he's going to be a free agent, and he'd probably be the second best free agent on the market behind Bo Bichette. Obviously, there are concerns with Bo Bichette and his ability to stay at shortstop defensively long term. But outside of him, it's Trevor Story, Miguel Rojas. I mean, it's not great. And there aren't a lot of teams that are looking to trade great shortstops. Those are not easy to come by. So if not Ha-Seong Kim, they're probably not going to pay for Bo Bichette, who's likely going to get a lot of money because he's a lone ranger in the free agent market this offseason at the shortstop position. Braves aren't going to pay him $30 million. So the options are very limited. And that's why the Ha-Seong Kim move could be great if you're able to get him to stick around. Caleb Cook says, who makes your starting rotation to start the 2026 season? So for me, it is Sale, Strider, Schwellenbach, assuming everybody's healthy there. Those are my three, definitely. Some sort of mid-rotation starter that you acquire in the offseason. And, we'll see. I'm hesitant to say Grant Holmes or Ronaldo Lopez just based on their health. And even if they are healthy, I wouldn't mind slow playing them to begin the season and ramp them up a little later on. So that's just kind of more of a prediction. And if that's the case, you can put Waldrop in that fifth spot. You could go with Joey Wentz if you want to keep a guy that doesn't have options. Obviously, if Waldrop keeps pitching the way that he is, I don't know how you keep him out of the rotation to begin next year. But that's more so how I see it lining up right now. Is you have Sale, you have Strider, you have Schwellenbach. There's a definite three that are in your rotation, assuming they're all healthy. I think you slow play the return of Grant Holmes and Ronaldo Lopez. I think you acquire a mid-rotation starter in the offseason, and then I think you put Hurston Waldrop in there or Joey Wentz or both of them and go with a six-man rotation. That would be my prediction right now for the rotation to begin next year. PJ's Braves, do Eli White or Nick Allen have a spot on the roster for 2026? I actually think Eli White has a better shot of sticking on the roster. I don't know Nick Allen's option situation. I know Eli White is out of options. I just think Eli White does a lot for you. He can play, every outfield position, help you defensively, has good speed, and we've seen him do a little bit with the bat this year. Now, it's a 79 WRC plus this season. That is certainly not great, but you've seen him in some stints here and there do some good things with the bat. His speed is obviously a big plus. I just think he can do more things for you, but he is out of options, so that does hurt him a little bit. I like Nick Allen, obviously, for the defensive aspects, and he is out of minor league options, so you'd have to keep him on the roster at this point. But it's just hard to justify keeping a guy on the bench that's only going to come in for defense, especially if you feel fine with Ha-Seong Kim at shortstop defensively. I think you'd rather have somebody. I think you'd rather just have a bat there. I think you'd rather have a Nacho Alvarez on your bench. I don't know that that's what they would do with him, or just keep him in the minors because he does have options and allow him to continue to progress there. I don't know if you can keep a guy. I mean, I know you can, but I don't know if that's the right move, I guess I should say, as a manager, as a front office, to keep a guy on your bench who is only going to come in an emergency defensive situation or an injury situation, something like that. I don't know that Nick Allen has a role on the team going forward. We'll see the rest of this month. Unless they just want to give Kim a break, I don't know that you're going to see much of Nick Allen. So I think there's actually a better chance that Eli White has a role on this roster next year over Nick Allen. If I had to choose which one I would keep on the roster and which one I think is more valuable, I actually think it's Eli White who can do a little bit more for you. All right, we got a lot more questions to get to on today's episode, more about Ha-Seong Kim, the luxury tax, and all that. We'll get into those questions here next. This episode is brought to you by Zipix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for a nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine Caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. You can use caffeine toothpicks before big meetings and long drives. They give you energy without the jitters, and the flavors like the peppermint watermelon ice actually taste great. Go to ZipixToothpicks.com. Use code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. That's ZipixToothpicks.com. Code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. Must be 21 or older to order. And warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's ZipixToothpicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zipix Toothpicks. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. They'll get you caught up with all the postseason races happening down the stretch here. You got the Yankees and the Blue Jays playing this weekend. That's an entertaining series with some postseason implications. The Mets and Reds as well. Let's go Red Legs, see if they can sweep the Mets this weekend and get back in that wild card conversation. They'll keep you up to date with all that's happening there. But let's jump back into the questions on this episode. And Justin Shoemake says, do you see Murphy still being a catcher DH platoon with Baldwin next season, or do they trade Murphy? Plus, do they sign someone to fill that DH role, but for a player that can also play the field so you can swap guys in and out of the DH spot to give players rest? So 2 questions here. My stance on Murphy remains the same, and I know he's really struggled in the second half. I think you only trade Murphy if it makes sense. I don't think you trade Murphy just to trade him, is basically what I'm saying. I'm not just giving Sean Murphy away. It has to be something that's going to be a help to you now, whether it's trading for a mid-rotation starter that has some control, whether it's trading for a shortstop prospect, something like that can help you. I'm not just giving Sean Murphy away. I still think he can be valuable on this team. Yes, it's a lot to play for somebody who, let's be honest, probably needs to be the backup catcher right now with the way that Drake Baldwin is hitting, and especially if he continues to get better. I do think Murphy is still better calling a game and defensively behind the plate, but as Baldwin gets better at that, I think we're going to see less and less of Sean Murphy, but I do still think there is value in having him. And so I'm not trading Sean Murphy for the sake of trading him because I have Baldwin, because normally in your catcher situation, you're going to have one primary catcher that you're paying a good amount, and then you're going to have a cheap backup catcher. It just happens to be in this case, you're paying your better catcher less and your worst catcher more, but it's the same thing. So, it's not like you're losing out on a ton of money there. I just wouldn't trade Sean Murphy just for the sake of trading him. But if something comes up that makes sense, yeah, all for it. Pull the trigger, go find you another cheap backup option. Go try and get Travis d'Arnaud back if you want to, something like that. The second part of the question, what I would do, and that's a lot of how I'm going to answer these questions today, and this kind of goes back to the question I answered earlier about finding another big bat. I think if they're going to find somebody to fill the DH role, it does need to be somebody that can play in the field, whether it's somebody that can play in the outfield, infield, whatever. I do think if they're going to sign another bat, and like I said, hopefully a big bat, I think it needs to be somebody basically, and I've held this conclusion for a while now, I don't want to see a Marcell Ozuna anymore. I don't want to see a DH only, unless that DH happens to be maybe Kyle Schwarber or Shohei Ohtani, which, let's be honest, Marcell Ozuna was right up there with Shohei Ohtani, maybe not quite to that level, but, second best DH in the league. That's who he was the past 2 years. But even with that, I just think it limits you on what you can do. And Acuña needs days off his legs in the DH spot every now and then. Profar probably needs to DH a little bit more to get him out of the outfield as a liability. I just think having a more fluid DH spot is the way that I would want to handle it as a manager and as a front office executive. That would be my plan, is to not have somebody that can only DH for you. Again, if they're going to do that, they have to be the best hitter in all of baseball. They have to be what Marcell Ozuna was the past 2 years. They have to be what Kyle Schwarber and Shohei Ohtani are right now. You have to be one of the best hitters in the league. In my mind, if you're just going to suck up that DH spot all year long and you can't move guys in and out of there. So I would rather have it be more fluid. Calvin Venner says, with Kim, what's your ideal Braves lineup for now? Let's just say going into next year, everybody's healthy. My ideal lineup is Acuña, Profar, Olsen, Riley, and then Drake. That's definite top 5 there. And then probably I want to put Ozzy Yeah, I guess Ozzy behind the lefty and Drake. So if they bring in a lefty for Drake, although Drake hits lefties better than righties, at least this year, then you put in Ozzy, and then you can put in Michael Harris, and then you go, Ha-Seong Kim and whoever else your DH is. I can see Ha-Seong Kim hitting ninth in the order next year, but I think that would be probably my ideal lineup, something like that. And then Calvin also said, with Hayden Harris up, do you think Lara and Richie are up after the AAA season is over? I don't. I think the window has passed for those guys to get an opportunity this year. I think Lara will come into camp next year competing for a bullpen role. I know it looks like they've transitioned him back to a starter, but it sounds like they're just having him work on some more pitches, so they're giving him more innings to do so. I don't know that I agree with that, but the Braves are much better at developing pitchers than I am. And I think Richie, he's just probably at his innings limit this year. I think if we were going to see him, we would have already. So I think they're probably just going to wait on him. I think he'll come into camp, looking to compete for a spot as well. And if he doesn't get it, I don't think he'll be much longer before we see him. Dustin Mount says, with the luxury tax being reset most likely this year, barring any changes, what are the changes in passing each threshold and signing a quality free agent? So I followed up with Dustin on this one because I didn't quite understand the question, but what Dustin is ultimately asking here is, what are the thresholds now that the luxury tax has been reset? So had they repeated for a third straight year, it would have been a 50% tax on any overage. But now that reset, and I'm trying to look it up real quick, I think it goes back to a 15% tax on the first year that you go over the threshold. And threshold for next year will be 244 million, I believe. So that will go up some. It'll help the Braves look. And there's some other questions about this, and we're going to get into it. I think the Braves are going to go well over the tax this upcoming year. Maybe that is me being optimistic, but I think the Braves are going to go well over it. So yeah, the luxury tax for next year is going to be 244 million. And now that the Braves have reset it, those penalties are not nearly as much. So first year over is 20% on overages. Second consecutive year is 30% on overages. And then a third consecutive year, which is what it would have been for the Braves this year, it's a 50% tax on overages. So now with them resetting it, if they go over it next year, which I think they will, it'll be a 20% tax on overages, which is basically nothing. So that's what it will be if the Braves do go over the tax again. Big Dog Fan 73. If Waldrop continues his current pace, do you still sign a free agent pitcher? If so, is he the only pitcher with options? What are your thoughts? Unless someone gets hurt between now and then, you already have 4 starters under contract for next year. So I kind of laid this out earlier. I would slow play Ronaldo Lopez and Grant Holmes going into next year, no matter what. And I would kind of hold them back just to kind of limit their innings and make sure they're healthy. And so I would sign a mid-rotation starter in the offseason, no matter what, and sign it to a deal, $10, $15 million. I'd bring Charlie Morton back for $12 million if he were willing to do so, just to have that depth in your rotation early on and just prepare for the injuries that were coming. So for me, no matter what Waldrop or anybody does, or any other, obviously if somebody gets Tommy John between now and then, they're going to be out all of next year. That changes things, and you have to go get a pitcher. But really, assuming everybody else stays healthy the rest of the way and Waldrop continues to pitch like he is, I'm still looking to find at least a mid-rotation starter in the offseason, just because you got to have that depth. I know it, potentially you could have Sale, Strider, Schwellenbach, Lopez, Holmes, Waldrop. You could have all these guys, but you're going to lose 2 or 3 of them for majority of the season. That's just how the game is right now. And you have to prepare for that. So whether that means slow playing some of your guys coming back from injury, whether that means going to a 6-man rotation, I think you have to do whatever you can to keep more starters, quality starters in your system. And it is why Waldrop may not start the year in the rotation next season, because he has options, even though he might be one of the best ones out there. But for me, I'm still picking up a starter no matter what. PJ's Braves, why is this team so bad at stealing bases? That is a question that has me pulling out my hair almost every game. I don't know. It seems so easy for other teams. And the Braves have good throwing catchers. Granted, a lot of the stolen bases against the Braves are on the pitchers. The Braves are bad at holding base runners, and they're bad at being base runners. And it is so incredibly frustrating. That is the one thing a lot of people ask me, what are the the differences without Wash and EY. And I guess I say that. I don't think the Braves were great at running the bases or holding on runners when they had those coaches either, but it certainly seems to be getting even worse. Those are just the two aspects that continually, and maybe it just frustrates me because I notice it, but it doesn't seem to happen for other teams, quite as much as it happens to the Braves. I mean, other teams seem to steal bases on us just so easily, and we struggle at stealing bases and we struggle at holding runners on, with the exception of a few. Max Fried was obviously good at it for years with that balk lefty move, which got Michael Harris the other night. It wasn't Max Fried that did it, but a lefty that did it. And Imanaga, Schwellenbach's good at holding runners on. There's a few, but for the most part, the Braves are just bad in both of those areas. And I don't know what it is, other than just lack of coaching, lack of good coaching in those areas. It's certainly something they need to get better of it. Michael Harris at the top of that list. There's no reason why Michael Harris shouldn't be stealing 20 to 30 bases pretty easily a year, and he's just so bad at stealing bases. Jason Watson says, with Sale, Schwellenbach, Strider, Lopez, and Waldrop filling out our rotation, if we acquire a quality starting pitching, what does that mean for Waldrop? Keep in mind we have Wentz, who has no minor league options. So talk about this a little bit with Wentz, and I think Lindsay's the one who initially brought this thought up to me, but Joey Wentz, if you wanted to keep him around as that swing man, you could keep him in the bullpen as a guy that can be a multi-inning reliever for you, can swing into a starter if needed. That'd be one way to keep him around and not have to lose him because he's out of options. I already mentioned with Lopez, I'd slow play him going into next year, whatever you could, and you'll see how things play out in spring training. Somebody gets hurt, whatever, it's eventually going to happen. I think at the end of the day, though, if say Sale, Schwelly, Strider, Lopez, and whoever they pick up in the offseason, they're all healthy, throwing the ball well in spring training, you want to go to a 5-man rotation, I think Waldrop's probably out, unfortunately. I think that's a real scenario just because he has options. I could see him going out. If it were me, I would just go to a 6-man rotation and let that play itself out because, again, eventually somebody's going to get hurt, have a setback. And so that's how I would play it. But I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't shock me at all if Waldrop starts the year in the minors next season just because he has options left. All right, we got several more questions I need to get to on today's episode. We'll finish those up here next. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up on the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the U.S. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com. That's 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament, and this offer ends October 31st, 2025. Jumping back into the questions here. The next one from Dustin Mounts, who says, do you think the impending lockout after next season will affect the free agent market this year? And if so, how do you see it affecting it? I'm trying to remember in the past when we've come up on off seasons before a potential lockout off season. Now we saw in the off season where the lockout happened, how it affected the Freddie Freeman situation. I think that played a huge role in that. Not to relive all of that, but it really shortened the window for when you could get moves done. So we saw how it affected it in that off season, but the off season before, I don't remember anything really changing, and I don't think it will have too much effect. Maybe on the years that you give a guy, I don't see it playing too huge of a role. I think teams and players this offseason will both just work and communicate it and put packages together and contracts together as if that season's going to happen, because I think that's the only thing that you can do. So I don't think it will have too much impact, but if I'm wrong, I'll come back and tell you in the offseason. Jason Watson, looking like AA's off to a good start this offseason with Wentz, Kenley, Fraley, and Kim added. What else is left to acquire? So for me, I still want a mid-rotation bat. I still think you need one or two high leverage arms, and I still think you need another big bat. So those are the four things for me right now. If I'm making my offseason to-do list, I still want to find a big bat. You can figure out where to put them. I still think you need two high leverage arms that have closer experience. If one of those is bringing Iggy back, that's fine. And I still think you need a mid-rotation starter. So for right now, for me, there's still four needs that I need to have to feel good about this team going into next year. And it's kind of at a minimum for me. Big Dog Fan 73. I just want to go back on that for a second. Reason I say that, and maybe that seems like a lot to you, maybe that doesn't seem like enough. It's been a bad season. And you reset the luxury tax, and I said all along, and I said it last offseason, you want to reset the luxury tax, that's fine, but you better come out swinging in this offseason. So my expectations for this offseason are that they are going to come out swinging and that there's going to be some big moves made. So my expectations are really high for this offseason that some big moves are going to be made. Big Dog Fan 73, would you give Iglesias another shot at closer for next year? He finished the year strong. 2 years ago, he was as good a closer as there was, and he would probably be cheaper given his age and his past performance. Yeah, as I just said, I'm all for bringing Iggy back. Not at $16 million, but if you could bring him back at somewhere between $8 and $12 million, it's just basically what you paid Joe Jimenez, what you paid Pierce Johnson, what you paid some other kind of middle reliever guys, just in case he's not that closer. I'd be all for that. And like you said, maybe you get him on a cheaper deal because he's been with the team. He is turning 36. I'd be all for bringing Iggy back at somewhere on a 1 year. The ideal contract for me would be, 1 year, maybe $10 million deal with an option year and a $2 million buyout. I think that would be the ideal contract for Iggy and the Braves this offseason. Jason Watson, say we do not attempt to bring Ozuna, high possibility back. That's one bat we need, but we need a player who can also play a position. Lindsay mentioned Brandon Lowe. Thoughts, or who do you have in mind? So I haven't really looked into the bats necessarily. I did mention Brandon Lowe earlier. I do think that would be a good bat because I think he's a lefty bat, has good pop, can play second base if Ozzy gets injured, which he does, quite often, or just is struggling, which he does quite often. I think that could be a good bat to make sense as somebody that you can play. And the only thing is with him, I think he can only play second, maybe some first base. I don't know enough about where all he can play, but I think he is a good lefty bat. He's also somebody that gets injured a lot too. But I think that's a good call. But as I said earlier, whatever bat you're going to bring in, it needs to be somebody that can play in the field so that you can rotate through that DH a little bit more. Matthew Hoffman, assuming we sign a starter, the rotation is Sale, Strellenbach, Strider, Raylo, and the free agent. What's your order you would call up the minor league starters? Well, you didn't mention Waldrop in that, so I'll take the low-hanging fruit there and say Waldrop is the next one I would call up, and then J.R. Ritchie is close behind him. Again, I wanted to see J.R. Ritchie get a shot this year. As I said earlier, I don't think that's going to happen. But for me, it would probably be Waldrop, Ritchie, and then Lucas Braun. I know Braun's still at Double-A, but I just think he's kind of that safer floor guy. So those would be the prospects. And Didier Fuentes. I know he's injured right now, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But I'd be fine with giving Fuentes another opportunity too. So that's probably – and then Owen Murphy. Man, the Braves have a lot of good pitching prospects. But I would probably rank it, Waldrop, Ritchie, Fuentes, Braun, Owen Murphy would be the 5 for next year pitching prospects that I would give a chance to. Place Blake Burkhalter on that list too if you wanted to. I'm a little bit lower on him as a starter than I know Lindsay is. Lindsay's high on him as a starter potential, but that's how I would probably rank it. Justin Shoemake, I'm not a fan of having Murphy as our DH. Yes, he is a good defensive catcher, but his bat is not worth the money they are paying him. Plus, you can get a good backup catcher cheap and just let Drake catch almost every day. So not necessarily a question there. Murphy, I really do feel for the guy. He's never got the real opportunity to be the everyday catcher here. The only time he did was beginning of 2023, and he was the best catcher in baseball at that time. And then ever since then, he's dealt with injury or split playing time with another catcher. So I feel for him a little bit, but also he does have these stretches like he's in right now. And it seems to be the second half of seasons for whatever reason. Like I said, you put him and Michael Harris together, you got one excellent player. But look, as I said earlier, I'm not looking to just get rid of Sean Murphy. If a right move comes along, I don't mind trading him if it makes sense and it's going to help your team out. But I do think there is some value in having Sean Murphy. Another one from Calvin Finner. Do you think folks are jumping the gun with Kim for 2026? He had a pretty solid September. Why would Boris not take him to the market? He's instantly the second best shortstop on the market. If he just shows he's healthy, he can beat a 1-year, $16 million deal. And yes, and that's kind of where we started off the show. I think we maybe are all jumping the gun a little bit, keeping in mind he is a Boris client. And if he does have a good September and is healthy, I mentioned the shortstop options this offseason. They're not great. So yeah, it's maybe not as slam dunk as we originally thought that Kim would be the shortstop for 2026. But I do think I still think it's a good move by Alex Anthopoulos because, it gives you that opportunity to negotiate something with him. Again, it is a Boris client, so that makes things a little bit difficult. But you at least have that opportunity. And maybe he does pick up, either he picks up the option or you at least get a negotiating window with him first to try to get a deal done. So I still think it's a good decision by Alex, but yeah, it's maybe not as given as many of us think. Chastity, do you think Acuña has been slacking a little when it comes to hustling in the outfield at times? You think he should be benched for a day or two? Sometimes it seems to me he doesn't care if he gets it out and just jogs towards catchable balls hit to him. So tough one to answer here. I'll say this. Acuña wears his emotions on his entire body. It's not just on his sleeve. It's on his entire body. And when it's going great, you see it. You see the smiles and all that. But when it's going bad, like it is right now, you see that too. And so it's really tough for a player like that who's not even killed. A guy like a Matt Olson where he's hitting a bomb. It looks the same as if he's, getting out. And it's just he's more even killed. Whereas Ronald, he's going to wear it. And so when we see him struggling, which isn't very often, and you see him slumping like that, you kind of notice those mannerisms a little bit more. I think it's a long season, been a long season for him, a frustrating season for him. His team's not in it. I'm not saying he's not giving it his all. I'm also not mad if he's not giving his all right now because I don't want him getting injured again. If this team was in the postseason race, would maybe you see him diving after a couple of these balls or something? Maybe. I don't know. I just think Acuña is a guy that really does show his emotions. And when he's down like this and he's slumping and you look at his body language, it can look pretty bad. Ransom, do you think Ozzy's first half struggles were still lingering effects from his broken left wrist late July, or we now seeing a healthy version? I think maybe early on you could have seen some of that. Also just think Ozzy is a very streaky player. And when he is hot, he is extremely hot like he is right now. But unfortunately, there's a lot of valleys for Ozzy too throughout the year. And usually when he plays the whole season, it adds up to a 250, 260 average, 20 to 30 home runs. I know that's not necessarily the case this year because of the awful start he got off to, but I think it's more Ozzy is just a very streaky hitter, and we're seeing a hot streak right now. Joseph Glisson, you're in charge this offseason, have around $65 million to avoid a luxury tax. What starter, 2 relievers, and hitter are you bringing in? I'm going to save that for my offseason preview show, Joseph, so make sure you come back for that. Dustin Melton, how serious of a run at Schwarber would you make this offseason? No, I've got a better chance at winning the lottery, but it's fun to think about. I'd make a strong one, kind of just like you did for Aaron Nola, to at least push up the price for Philly. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think Philly's going to bring him back. He's such a good clubhouse guy for them and obviously a great hitter. I think he's going back to Philly. But I'd make a serious run just to at least drive up the price for the Phillies. And then last one from Chris 1414. I know the offseason hasn't started yet, but do you see a scenario in the free agent and trade market where Braves could fill a mid-rotation starting pitcher, a bullpen piece, and a bat in an everyday lineup while keeping the payroll number realistic? I do. Absolutely. I don't think they'll be paying at the top, but you're not asking for that. A mid-rotation starter, again, 10 to 15 million on a 1-year deal. I think that's absolutely doable. A bullpen piece, another 8 to 12 million, like I talked about with Izzy. I think that's certainly doable. An everyday bat's going to be the key one because I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. If you're not paying top dollar in free agency, you're going to have to trade for something. But I do think there is as I said earlier, my expectations this offseason is that they are going to go back well over the luxury tax. Remember 2 years ago, they were way over the luxury tax. They were into the second penalty. So we know they're capable of doing it, and I expect them to do it again this offseason. So my expectations are they're going to be very aggressive. They're going to spend a lot. Keep in mind, some of the contracts for these players like Strider and others, they're going up this year too. So you do have to keep that in mind, but I think all of that is very reasonable. All right, thank you so much for joining me here today. Battle for Truth, Todd Twilley, Matt Carter, Soul Still Burns, Doug. as well. Mark Delgado, thank you all for joining me here live. Hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Hope you all have a great weekend. Me and Lindsay on the postcast all weekend long. So check that out right here in your Locked On Braves podcast feed. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you.